Then there's a 3-6. Series price is not $1.85. It is much deeper, higher than that on Philadelphia. So Sixers are in the minus 900 range for the most part. Sixers and Brooklyn Nets in the 3-6. And it makes sense, right? Because Brooklyn has basically had a really poor second half of the year, especially once Kevin Durant, once Kyrie Irving were out of the fold. Basically been a team struggling to play 500 ball. And you have an interim head coach and Jacques Vaughn in there.
Yeah.
There's just not been much to get excited about, and that's why the prevailing thought heading into the series, Jared, is it's going to be either a sweep or gentlemen's here with Philadelphia just running roughshod over.
It's unfortunate, but you do have a few of these series, I think, in the first round that are just not conducive to excitement. And you also have last year a very difficult run for Philly in the second round there against Miami. So we'll see if they've learned their lesson there. I mean, they did beat Toronto in the first round last year, and that's nice. And Joel Embiid is, I don't want to say he's maybe will be motivated because we won't know about the MVP doesn't get announced until the finals week, right? I believe
deep in the postseason.
Either the conference finals or the week of the regular, like the finals.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't use that as a motivating factor for him missing out on the MVP award again, and then using that as fuel to add to that fire. I don't really have a feel for the Sixers this year. I think they're very top-heavy, obviously. James Harden hasn't had a ton of playoff success. Tyrese Maxey, obviously, is a guy that you would think has some upside there long-term, but Tobias Harris is a PJ Tucker. These are veteran guys that have been there before, so that certainly helps. But I think they're going to go as far as their big man carries them. The Nets, game to game, you would expect Philly to be favored by significant amounts in every game except for maybe the road games. So good luck betting that one game to game. What's the Philly minus 1.5 games?
That's probably
that's the only way I would consider betting it. Probably.
Honestly, it's minus 1.5. You got to lay over $3.
Yeah,
so it's the 2.5. Minus 2.5. Where
that means they've got to win. That means they got to win 4-1.
5, right?
Yeah,
5 or less. That's minus 150. If you were to play one of those markets, you would do that over the under.
What's Sixers in 5?
Sixers in 5 is plus 205.
So maybe what you do is you play the minus 2.5, and then you play Sixers in 6 as your hedge
at 4-1.
There you go. You got a minus 2.5 is plus money, right?
Yeah. And math wise, like you could play if you played both the 4-0 and 4-1, which is plus 245 and plus 205, so $100 on each.
Yeah, I guess
you're probably it's a slightly better payout if you bet both of those than just the Sixers to cover the 2.5 games, since you're still laying.
Really, the series spreads are the only way I like to bet the playoffs, the early rounds, and then once we get into the later rounds, then I'll go game to game. But the early rounds, especially the first round, I only bet series spreads. I think 2.5 might be too much for me. A little too rich for my blood.
Especially a team like the Philly, the advanced numbers finished very strong. 3rd on offense, 8th on overall net defensive rating. But
it's a shame.
Is it airheaded? Is airheadedness a fair way to describe Philadelphia in certain stretches, especially playing down to their competition? Because they've had those stretches. But
I could see the Nets stealing a game.
Right.
I could absolutely see the Nets stealing a game. So I would say I would play it Sixers minus 2.5, and then you would hedge Sixers in 4-1, and you would feel at least somewhat protected there, that it's not going to be a sweep.
Yeah, fair way to look at it. I have to look, at least say this for the Sixers. They understand it's a likely series against Boston in the semis. You can somehow get through this series in 4.
That's another element to
it. Right, because your only chance. You hope that, I think if you're Philadelphia, you're hoping Miami gets that 7.
Yeah.
They at least make Boston work, maybe extend that series to 6. And you just hope that as a result, you can use that physicality and the fact there might be a little more fatigue to your advantage. Try to get that to a 7-game series and take your chances in that spot if you're Philly.
That is another element to it, is because of who the matchups could be in the second round. You see teams that want a sweep. Like, we want the sweep. A lot of time, we that's where the term gentleman sweep came from.
Right.
Because it's just that you're up 3-0, and then you just kind of mail it in that 4th game. Wow. But I could see a team like the Sixers saying, we need that extra day because we got to face the Celtics, and they are a bear.
It's a fair angle, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I think it makes me more inclined just to bet the series price at minus 2.5 for a very small amount, with the expectation that Philly's just going to, do what they're far and away the better team here. Like, I think 2.5 at plus money is a fair price, but it's just if the Heat steal that first game, or if the Nets steal that first game, which that historically speaking,
there have been those opportunities in the past.
So maybe that's the right hedge to make. Maybe you bet Philly minus 2.5 games, and then you take the Nets against the spread in game 1. Maybe that's the way to hedge it. You can also win both. The Sixers could win the game.
You could be in a
they
position
could not
to
cover, and then you could still get the 2.5. Or the Nets could win that game, and then you could still go 4 straight.
Right. Like, I mean, the Milwaukee Atlanta East Final was a great example of that, where Atlanta comes in as like a 9.5, 10-point dog, win game 1 outright,
and lose all 4.
And then they pushed it to 6.
They pushed it to 6.
But I mean, that Milwaukee price it went down to like minus 180, and that was just auto fire.
And that's another very intriguing way to play the series is. You wait for that. There is going to be an upset at some point in game 1. Game 1s tend to be the dogs. And then you just come off of it in game 2 and you bet the series price on the team that lost game 1. The zigzag approach is another, popular method that I've seen looked at. But I think JVT debunked that last year with some hard data.
Yeah, it's not as and it's, again, you have to be very specific in how you play it. It's not just a blind. You get in trouble very quickly if you start doing that blindly. So that's 76ers Nets 3-6 matchup in the East.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.